All right, I think let's just get started. I think we probably have 1 minute, and we're also waiting for other people coming in. But I like to introduce myself. So my name is HuiHui Wang, and I'm from Agricultural Science Education Communication with the affiliate joint position with curriculum instruction. I'm one of the countless faculties, and I think a couple people coming in as a catalyst faculty in which we particularly doing integrated STEM, including engineering design, mathematics, like into science education. So that's pretty much what I do. And just give you a heads up, like you might need to, kind of move around because we don't really sit, just listen. So you're gonna participate in activities that hopefully, like it's a little bit different from just lecturing here. So just give you a heads up. If I wanted to you move, like don't be shy, get to know your neighbors, and then move your chairs, okay? So, all right, so I know you all here, trying to, get to know a little bit better about what's education about. So today's topics, I've been told, like this is what we're going to do. It's learning from elementary school. How many of you actually has teaching experience before? Okay, so where you have the experience?
I was an assistant teacher in a K through 2 special education classroom.
Okay, so K through 2. Okay, good. So you're in the elementary setting, so you're probably very familiar today some of the things I present to you. Anybody else, has any kind of a teaching experience? Okay, great. So don't be shy, okay? So at least we have some, like everybody's on the same page, all right? So the first things I would like to show you is the agenda. Like this is what we would do. So we're going to, maybe it's so far away, from your elementary school, you don't really remember what does that looks like. So we're gonna do what an elementary school classroom looks like first. And then we were moving to the learning style and then teaching strategy, particularly for in general. But then we will talk more about, doing like engineering design activity for upper elementary school girls, because one of the things for pushing STEM education is, like we have some gender gaps in here. So today, we particularly kind of think about if you're gonna design some activity for upper elementary girls, like what does that looks like, okay? And then so then we will debrief for about like 10 minutes. All right, any questions so far? All right, so I wanted you to take a look a video, and you might jot down some of the things that you notice, okay? And we're gonna share as with the big groups, what did you observe, in a very typical elementary school classroom, all right? So let's do this. So 8:35 a.m., okay? I'm starting here. You are let's say you're in a car. It is Hawaii. Hawaii has volcanoes. It's very sunny there. Like Maui was the son of Queen Lao and Venus. And they dwelt at a place one normal scene did for one station. He prepared a new store, and from that time on, it was belongs to me. Let's play partner meeting. Ready, set, go. And then always. All right, so I will stop here. So what do you notice? just from the videos. Yes.
The kids are really involved, like they all read together, and there's a kid up like using a ruler and following along with what they were
Okay,
reading.
so that's one of, so did you see the, what's the strategy that teacher was using? Anybody notice that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just having all
Reading.
the students pointing to each word
Yeah.
so that they can all follow along with it.
Yes, that's the reading. So that's one of strategy. You have your hands up.
Yeah, I noticed that the desks were not in rows, and then like the time markings, it seemed like they were moving around a lot into like sitting by different people and doing different activities.
Yes, so it's easier for the students face to face and then talk, like an interaction. What else do you recognize compared to your classroom? Okay, so what else do you recognize that? Yeah.
The design of the physical classroom, there's a lot more like really loud and like bright colors, and there's just stuff everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, was that like it resonates when you grow up? That's your elementary classroom.
Yeah.
Yes. And how many of you actually also noticed something like how they work together? Anybody? You're very quiet here. Yeah. So what do you say?
I guess originally they were all sitting and they were following the teacher all doing one exact thing before reading.
Yeah.
But then later on they just split up into groups to help maybe quieter kids participate more.
Yeah, like work together as a small groups, right? Yeah. So all those things that you notice, like it's very easy. If you can thinking back your elementary school age, which I believe is not too far away, and the class is always so colorful, and then has all the things, on the walls, whether it is the vocabulary or, the rulers, all those type of things. We're going to talk about a little bit more why, okay? And then you see teachers doesn't really, like going a lot, like a structure, like if you're in the college, you're taking engineering class or physics or a science class, the teacher's always the one like doing all the teaching, but like the video I show is more like students are doing more teaching peers to peers, okay? And yes, you notice, like the classroom setting alignment is it's not like this. This is kind of like a setting that really not friendly for people can work together and then talk together, but like they want the peers, like students can work together. So good, so now you're starting to notice the things, like it's kind of different from your classroom or your classroom setting or your professor to teach what's going on for your knowledge input, okay? Now, so here is what we're going to do. Okay, you're going to discuss with your peers. Okay, if you work along, please come down and then maybe 2 or 3 people together and then starting talking about, like how are they, elementary school students' ability to learn. So you might think that they are, like how many of you have seen the shows, Are You Smarter Than 5th Graders? So sometimes you laugh about that too, right? So what do you think about their ability to learn? As elementary students, like are they smart? Like are they, like still in a developmental process, trying to, like thinking more to become adult? And then so those are the things, like can, I want to set up stage and help you to get to know a little bit more about elementary school students. And imagine yourself as an elementary school, students. So how do you perceive they to learn? So putting your educator's hats on. So now you're thinking, okay, what's the ability for they to learn? And if I'm the educator, how would I, teach elementary school students, okay? And is there any preferable, teaching learning style that, those can help elementary students to learn? So you can write down some of the important, concept that you talk with your peers. You can reflect back when you were elementary school students as well, okay? And what helps you learn the best when you were young, okay? So talk to your peers, and we will come back maybe in a couple minutes, and then we will share what do you find out from different peoples, okay? Go ahead. How do you feel? Yeah.
I think that like they ask a lot of questions.
Ah.
Definitely, they're so young. They're so curious about their surroundings.
Yeah. It wants to get the teacher's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see a lot of hands up. Yeah. Keep going. Yeah, that's good. Good conversation. Yeah.
I feel like they would probably rather learn by actually playing with things. You know, like kids are very they're pretty sensory. So if you do things, like Play-Doh, things they can feel. I feel like a lot of elementary students are really fidgety, so I feel like constantly sometimes they're using like iPads and sometimes they're writing things down.
Hands on.
Yeah, hands-on variety.
Yeah.
Changing up what you're doing. I thought it was kind of fun how, like, you look at the timestamps and, like, every 30 minutes
Yeah.
or so they're doing something different, which
Yep.
is so polar opposite from what we do.
Yeah, and then it's because the younger kids, their attention is
Yeah.
switched really fast. So yeah, so
Yeah,
good you
that's what we
noticed
were
that. We're
talking
gonna we're gonna talk about that too.
great.
Yeah, so you have to switch very fast
Yes.
to keep their attention. Yeah.
Yeah, I think lecturing at them and just standing there and talking will never work. But group work and all those different things would be important for them to learn how to work in groups, whether it's math, social studies, science, all elementary school, most of it was group work rather than everyone sit down and be quiet no matter what. At least those were my experiences.
Your teacher tell you to sit down and be quiet.
Not, I mean, there were times where it would happen, but a lot of work, like if it was math, like we could buddy up and do math
Yeah,
together, or
yeah.
social studies, or reading
Yeah.
groups, book groups, things like that. I mean, quiet times would be like quizzes or
Yeah.
you know, lesson that they teach for 10 minutes. But like for college, you know, how they can lecture for 50 straight minutes, you know, that would never work for elementary.
Yeah, like really have time to really work together. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we will talk about a little more about that too.
I'm just being honest.
Like, I don't know, the elementary school in the video is very different from my elementary school, I would say.
How does that difference? Like how does that difference? You know, like the video shows the elementary school is different from yours. How?
I would say I grew up in an affluent
Okay.
area.
Okay.
So the school itself was very modern and very hands-on.
Okay.
So instead of like a projecting screen,
Okay.
we had like an interactive board inside.
Ah, oh, that's
Like,
cool. Yeah.
So like my ideal elementary school was like what I experienced, and like nothing like that.
Oh, very interesting.
Mine
Yeah.
was very similar.
Mine was very
They're like
similar.
very similar. They're
Yeah.
very typical.
Like,
You know.
Did you have like the smart board in your?
Yeah, I had
we
like
never
smart
had
boards
smart
and like we'd have like bouncy balls.
We had like
See, I didn't get that, but my brother did.
Oh
My
yeah,
brother,
yeah.
I was kind of jealous of that.
we got like one in one of our classrooms when I got to high school, and I
Oh.
never used it. So I
Uh,
was from a small town in
okay.
rural Indiana.
Yeah.
You know,
So.
kind of a big difference. Between,
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's really like a resources wise as well.
Exactly,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Very similar though, how it wasn't
Yeah.
like in rows. It was like
Exactly.
whether it be tables or like everyone sitting around each other. That's something that I really.
Okay, that's brought back to as a big good conversation, right? It's kind of like remember, you know, you kind of goes back timeline, says when I was in elementary school, how does that looks like, right? So what the very important things, or you say aha moment says from your discussion, anyone would like to share? I heard something, you know, like maybe that groups, yeah, you talk about very visual.
Kids are very visual, and they like to interact. So you want to teach them the things that like are interest to them and very personal, because they like to like they're gonna be more into it if it's something that they're already like interested in,
Yeah.
rather if it's you're just telling them like something they don't know about and don't care about.
Yeah.
So, and they're also very active, so something that involves like getting up and moving around and talking to others is usually really good.
Yeah. So that was from your experience, personal experience. And then you mentioned one thing very important. They like to get out and move around. And I think it's many groups say that too, right? So I think you were saying too, you know, like the groups a lot, you know, working, and then so only the test time, and then stop kind of like not talking, right? So would you like to share a little bit more about the experience that you say? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we talked a lot about like transition periods, how in college we eventually just focus on one major and really get deep and gritty with one topic basically. But in elementary school, it's important to do like social studies, math, science, all those different topics, and keeping it fresh, maybe only 30 minutes, 40 minutes at a time, rather than forcing them to do math for like 7 hours a day.
Yeah, you mentioned the time frame, and I think you talk about that too. Share what's your observation. Yeah.
We were talking about how it's wild that if you look at the timestamps, they're changing activities like every 30 minutes, which is polar opposite of what a day for us looks like.
Yeah. So, can anybody imagine why they're changing activity, like the instructor needed to change constantly change activity? You have your hands up.
Oh yeah, a lot of elementary students have like a way shorter attention span. So if you keep them on the same activity for too long, they'll kind of start to go stir crazy and
Yeah.
stop learning, and
Yeah.
it's just more effective for them to switch between things.
Yeah, they were jumping up and down, like I'm not learning anymore, right? So you can see that very, like a very, very obvious. Yeah. How many of you actually, when you were in elementary school, you see when teacher asks a question, everybody raise their hand, right? They want the attention. They want the teacher's attention. So those are the things, you're not normal, okay? So everybody does that. And then so when you really think about your elementary school, experience, and that tells you something, right? It's very colorful, and then they are very visual. And then so the classroom looks really, really colorful. And you also mentioned about the resources, right? And then so in the rural area and, like urban area, everybody has a different resources as well. Sometimes, like you have those. How many of you actually experience when you're elementary school, you have the, smart board already? Just a couple of you, right? And then so most of you actually still using a very traditional, whiteboard or blackboard there. Yeah. So that's another technology involvement, and then so can help students, teacher doing more thing and try to grab students' attention. Yeah. How many of you actually, when you're in elementary school, that your teacher ask you to sit down and I'm gonna read you a story? Right? So like you have like a sit down and have a storybook, and that's another very very effective strategy for teaching elementary school, because you are telling them a story. They love story. Okay, so I'm kind of giving you a hint now. What works for elementary school. Okay, now. So there's some type of learning that we kind of, looping in, like talk about that already. So I'm gonna show you something in here. Everybody knows, like we have, when you think about learning style, it's not one learning style. If you are the educator, you are trying to design your lesson plan or curriculum, whatever you want to call, and then to address a lot of a different learning style, like learner. Sometimes, like we mentioned, the elementary school students are very visual. And then so when you're trying to do things, like then you're trying to give them a lot, colorful things, maybe drawing, like to draw their attention. Many of you mentioned hands-on activities, like they love hands-on activity. They like to, run around, like doing things when you're trying to teach them. And then so those are very physical, and then so when you think about those designs of your activities, trying to address the as many as you can, and then learning working in the groups, like so those are the things. Just give you some heads up, like what they would like, okay? And then also, you also having some teaching strategy in here. So when we think about, this is all very in general, when we think about the education, so we think about people's learning style, and then we also think about how are we going to address those learning style by using teaching strategy, which, I don't want to use a lot of jargon in here. So those are very layman language in here. So for example, traditionally lecturing, you see that a lot in undergrad courses, like those maybe physics, like those, or mathematics, those professor writing all the boards, lecturing. You get assigned to reading, and then so like you see, it's a very different format as well. In college, we say you go back and then read, you come back here and answer the question, but in elementary, they coordinate reading together, right? So that's a very different style. Storytelling, demonstration, hands-on activity, those are on a field trip, of course, yeah. So those are the things are, like we say, it's some teaching strategy can help you grasp your audience, with your students' attention, okay? So I wanted to show you something very, very big, broad concept. It's called learner-centered teaching strategy. So then we have active learning, we have an inquiry learning, we have a contextual learning. So don't worry about those terms, because those are very, like a terminology for the education field. But what I would like to show you is in here, for example, you give the real-time feedbacks. Like a good professor probably, so this is not only applies to elementary, but in general of the education. To be a good professor or educator, you give a real-time feedback. You do visual, like a storytelling, like you. So one of the, ranking very high quality of be a good professor is you have to be very humor, okay? So that's one of the, from the literature review from the study. You got a visual and then social, okay. So this is another, like a movement, role plays, and then so those are the strategy help you to facilitate a different activity to teach your students. Inquiry-based learning is a simulation, project-based learning. I think this project-based learning is very familiar to people who are in the engineering field, because you do all the time, project-based learning, right? You got problem-based learning, you got case study, and then so those are the things that you can say are, like you can apply to education field when you think about your lesson plan design, or you're trying to teach educate, you try to teach students, and those are the things that you can play around and then put that into your design of a curriculum. So I wanted to just kind of stop here. So basically what, from the beginning to now is I'm trying to looping you to some of the teaching strategy, and based on the different people's, teaching style, learning style, and also particularly for elementary school students, what does that looks like, okay? Because now you're going to do a fun assignment. You are going to design something, okay? So think about, like you can talk to your peers, before the person that you work with. So now, your clientele, so I'm using the engineering language, right? So it's upper elementary school girls, which in the EPICS, like you go out and collaborate with elementary school or high school, depends on who are your audience, right? So right now I say you're gonna doing something with the upper elementary school girls. So upper elementary school could be 4th grader, 5th grader. Sometimes people consider 6th grader is still elementary, depends on which area you are. So you can decide whatever you like, okay? So you got 15 minutes, okay? So now what you're going to do is you're gonna discuss with your peers, your friends who sit beside you. How are you going to structure this 15 minutes, we say engineering design activity, that for those girls? So what you're gonna come up by at the end of this activity is you're gonna identify your audience. Who are those audience? Okay, what grade levels they are? What's the social economic status? And or are they, are they minority? And then so those are the things that you identify, and so we will see whether if your the teaching strategy that you choose fitting into those particular groups that you choose as well, okay? You have to have a clear learning objectives, which I believe that Paul Asanda already talked about that, right? Learning objectives. So when you design something, lesson plan, you need to have a learning objectives in here, right? Am I right? Okay. I just want to assume. I don't want to assume that you know what does that mean. Okay. So you have to, like we talk about, they have a very short attention span. So what are you going to do with these 50 minutes? So you're going to divide your activity into, like a 50 minutes, what kind of activity that they will do within this 50 minutes, but also still fitting into your learning objectives. It's a very, like kind of capstone project for you now, okay? So kind of get you back to what you have learned from the past couple of weeks, but trying to think about what you learned and then putting something together. Imagine that you're gonna teach with this group. Does that make sense? All right, so that's spend maybe like 10 minutes and talk to your peers how your activity will look like, and then we will have you to share with everybody. All right. Before you do that, I'm giving you some hints. Based on the research, those are the things that, based on the research we learned from the upper elementary school students, those are what they like or what they don't like. Okay? So now you can work with your groups, and we will come back as a big group in 10 minutes.
Make a bridge or like make a house, something like that.
Decided yet?
Yeah, we're teaching the engineering design process, but we're trying to figure out the activity for teaching the engineering design
That's good.
process.
Yeah, to whom? To like what grade?
4th and 5th grade.
Okay, fourth and fifth grade.
That's upper elementary school.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just regular public school? Okay.
That's what we're gonna do.
Okay, so now the activity.
Yeah,
What are
then
you
do
gonna
the
do?
actual thing.